Let's do a deep dive.
We do want to do a deep dive this week. We like to rotate our longer segments at this part of the show. And we thought that this week we just had to talk about the topic that's consuming political insiders and most of Washington, which is the off-the-hook interview that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave over the course of a year to Vanity Fair, in which she said some pretty eye-grabbing things. Let me give you a quick TLDR. Wiles said that Trump has an alcoholic's personality. She described Vice President J.D. Vance as a longtime, I believe she said, decade-long conspiracy theorist. She called Office of Management and Budget Director and Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 veteran Russell Vought a, quote, right-wing absolute zealot. She criticized Attorney General Pam Bondi's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files as having completely whiffed it. She admitted that she had tried and failed to temper some of Trump's impulses, like his blanket pardons for January 6th defendants and offenders, but was overruled. And she acknowledged clearly that Trump is motivated by political retribution in some of his political prosecutions, and that he is just on a vendetta to go after his political opponents with the full force of the federal government and the legal system. We want to unpack this a little bit. Let me start with point number one. I think you and I agree that most of what she's saying here, if not 100%, is very true and very full of proof. Is anything off base here?
I don't think so. We actually toyed with the idea of using that as our rundown topics, but we sort of realized that what we would say was like, no, you're right. No, you're right. No, that's right. We figured nobody wants to listen to that. What struck me about this is who Susie Wiles is. Not only is she the White House Chief of Staff, she's a seasoned political operative. She's a real pro, very respected. I've never worked with her, but I know a lot of people who have. And in this business, there are not many people that get glowing from your colleagues. She is good at what she does.
Yeah, even Democrats, I will say, if they don't like her, they respect her. They know she's a serious professional and she's very good at it.
Right. And so when you take it with this, it is not a Project Veritas undercover video. She sat down, I think, with 11 interviews, recorded along the way. You got to ask the question, why did she say this? And
again, we agree. You go down the list of the most eye-grabbing things she said. Alcoholic's personality, check. J.D. Vance is a conspiracy theorist, check. Russell Vought is a right-wing absolute zealot, check. I have written this up in Newsweek. It's on my Substack. Read about it if you want more detail. Pam Bondi whiffed, checked. And it's so obvious. I mean, we can't verify that she's tried to temper some of Trump's impulses, but the fact that he is pursuing a political vendetta against his enemies list is obvious. This reminds me, I went to Ardmore College, and it's a very notoriously nerdy school. We were playing our rivals in basketball, and the crowd was chanting at us, freaks and geeks, freaks and geeks. And we all looked around and we're like, you got us. What are we going to say? Jocks and cool people? No, this is absolutely true. But so what about the why? Well, you were about to go somewhere with that. Yeah. What is motivating her? Because as you say, this was premeditated.
Yeah, I think it's deliberate. Like, I think what she did is a deliberate strategy. And I think it's probably a couple things. One, I think she's sending a clear message. And we saw Trump do this with True Social posts to Pam Bondi. It's not uncommon for this administration to send a message. I think Susie Wiles is the enforcer here a little bit. She used this to rein in Vance and Bondi. I think this was all part of the plan. Look, we've both worked in politics for a long time. In order to do an interview with a reporter, a senior member of the White House Chief of Staff, they go through a lot of layers. Everybody knew about it. Yes. Not something that just happened. And so my guess is this is a deliberate, this is a message. This is sending a clear message to at least those two, at least Pam Bondi and J.D. Vance. I think second, it's a little bit to kind of bring some normalcy, if you will, to the White House. We love the palace intrigue, but to have an adult in the room like Susie Wiles gives a lot of people comfort. And I think part of this is her saying the things that she said kind of reinforces to a lot of Americans, no, it's just not a bunch of crazy sycophants. There are people in here that are adults. To see someone like Susie Wiles give an inside look and to say, no, this isn't all by design. One of the things she talked about, tariffs are way worse than they thought this was going to be. They wanted more time. They couldn't even come to an agreement on tariffs. I think it's just an adult in the room right now.
I have a slightly more cynical view than you do, because I think about who's the audience here. She gave this to Vanity Fair, and the word vanity is right in the title of the publication. This is the kind of political profile that insiders do because they're trying to elevate their own profile and they like the appearance on the cover. This is not for a wide audience. This is not for middle America. This is aimed at and for political insiders, for the kinds of people who are now losing their shit over this. And the message is to them. What message is she sending? I think you're right that it's about, I'm the adult in the room, but I think it's more about creating a little bit of historical distance from the absolute batshit craziness going on inside this White House, and to say, hey, I tried to restrain him with the pardons. I will acknowledge, and I will not defend the indefensible when it comes to his political retribution campaign. I think that Russell Vought is a freaking nut job. Establishing all these points on the record in a sliver publication that's aimed right at the inside of the Beltway, that's a way of saying, I'd still like to be employable in the future. I'm not a crazy person. This is me auditioning for my next job. I think this is about her and protecting her own ass.
We both know there's also a lot of layers on why you do an interview like that. And I think you're probably right. I think there is a little bit of historical moment to it. There's also, and it's a classic White House move, is give it to something like this and let the press just feed on it, just feed and feed. Again, I don't believe anything she said is not something Donald Trump knew was coming. I don't think she went off script that much. Even the line where Trump believes he can do anything as president. It's interesting when you watch it on Republican side, because they don't seem to want to address it too much. And what's sad about this is this was their hall pass. This was their opportunity for each of those Republicans to be like, yeah, no, she's right. I wish we didn't do this, but they still didn't take it. And I think that goes back to the spineless Republicans. So I think her audience was multiple.
Yeah, and she's knifing. She's actively knifing. You talked about the sad part of this. I think what's sad about this is, at any other point in American history, if you had a White House chief of staff openly acknowledging that the president of the United States was pursuing a corrupt political vendetta against his enemies, this is why Nixon was impeached. This is why Trump was impeached the first time. The White House chief of staff has just admitted this on the record. And what Republicans are doing is they're saying, yep, nothing to see here. And so that's the sad part of this, because in any other era, that White House chief of staff would have to be a sacrificial lamb and immediately fired and disavowed. Or if you admit this, then it's impeachment time. But let's talk about where that takes us. Is this just a flash in the pan? They don't mind having palace intrigue stories because it's a hell of a lot better than substance stories about what's going on in America. Does this have any lasting impact beyond the next few days?
No, I don't think it does. And it was always designed to be a good end of the year story. It's a Spotify unwrapped for the palace intrigue, like you said. You're right. In any other era, we would see her resign, fired, or impeachment with this. I think Americans, they're sick and tired of seeing this. And the fact that it's just in their face all the time feels like a White House that's just trying to grow its executive muscle. And as Republicans, we used to be against this. So when Barack Obama did executive orders, we were all over that. We were screaming. We were angry. We said it was abuse of power. Now we eat them like they're Tic Tacs. One of the things that the Susie Wiles interview did was just kind of confirm that there is this feeling in there of an ever-growing executive who feels emboldened to do whatever he wants to do. And as a story itself, I don't think we see it much past early next year.
I don't think it's going to make it to the new year, but I don't see this being like a public facing story. I don't think that the average American is going to hear much more about this. Where I do think it's going to resonate is in inside circles among Republican donors, among Republican operatives, as people position for the future of the party past Trump. And she is trying to knife Russell Vought, diminish his role, knife J.D. Vance, diminish his role.
The other thing is I advise Republican candidates, and it creates an interesting problem in the trenches, because these are questions we have to address when talking to voters. And it's very difficult right now for Republicans to maneuver around it. You would like to say, yes, that's true. Yes, that's it. But the reality is there's still the way the system works, and we got to win primaries and then generals. And then when we get to debates, Democrats are going to bring this up as well. It creates headache after headache. And from a Republican perspective, it makes it harder for Republicans to win.